Thank you for joining us for our last of 2 webinars on the Foster Grandparent and Senior Companion in Action, Mobilizing a Generation. Hello, everyone, and thank you for learning with us today. My name is Deborah Trishon. It is always a pleasure to host webinars like this. Today, I'm joined in by my colleagues, Emily Flanagan and Callan Evans. You will see them in the Q&A pod. But I want to take the opportunity on behalf of AmeriCorps Seniors team to welcome you to the AmeriCorps Seniors Foster Grandparent and Senior Companion Replacement Opportunity. It is an opportunity available right now, and I get excited about this opportunity because it is a great time to reestablish some program areas that may have been lost over the last year and to meet the needs of those communities. I do want to share some more preliminaries with you. I mentioned adding questions to the Q&A pod. I do want to manage expectations and say that it is my goal to get to all of your questions, but also we know we have an hour of content to get through. One caveat about questions, because this is a competitive-like opportunity, there are a few questions I may not be able to answer. If you particularly questions are specific or require a lot of context or discussion, we cannot address those today. We want to make sure everyone gets all of the information they need. If that is the case, you can send your questions to the email address on the screen, 2022 FGP SCP replacement at cncs.gov. The Opportunity of Funding page have all of the information you need to submit an application. There is another question that none of us can answer today because of the type of opportunity this is. We cannot provide individual coaching or advice. This is a competitive-like process for an opportunity, and we want to get great applications, and we want to make sure it is fair as possible for everyone involved. I cannot tell you what to put in an application. I cannot tell you whether to start your program this way or that way. That is all up to you as you complete your application. But I can help you understand rules and regulations and tools available, but it is up to you to put together the best application for this process. This is one of 6 webinars that will be provided to help you through the process. All recordings will be posted on each opportunity funding page a week after their recording. All sessions are being recorded and will be posted again on the Opportunity of Funding page. One thing not listed on this page is we are going to have an opportunity for Q&A, questions and answers on January 12th. And so I'm going to add that to the chat. It is also on the Funding Opportunity page. But if you are interested in that, or you don't get questions answered, or things come up as you're processing, please feel free to attend that. So we do have some polls for you to kind of get to know the audience and see who's here. The first one, has your organization received a federal grant before, including one from AmeriCorps, programs like AmeriCorps Seniors? Yes, no, not sure. Okay, we can go ahead and end the poll. And it looks like we do have quite a few of you that have had experience with the AmeriCorps or at least AmeriCorps Senior program, so that's good to see. The next question, how well do you know AmeriCorps Senior? You're brand new to all of this, familiar with how it works, but not a grantee, or you are a current grantee. It looks like we have quite a few current grantees on the line. That's great to hear. And welcome to the new folks. Glad to have you. Third question, how would you describe the primary field of your organization? Are you an aging, volunteerism, community development, faith-based organization, higher education, state, county, municipal, or other local governments? And then, or something else? All right, it looks like we have a mix of aging, quite a few volunteerism, a couple of community development and faith-based organization. Well, thank you guys for coming. Glad to have you. How did you hear about us? I am a current grantee. A local AmeriCorps employee told me about it. An email from a partner, other, or I'm not sure. Okay, as a current grantee, you knew it was coming down, so that's great to see. Emails, I'm glad the emails are reaching you from AmeriCorps and other partners, also good to see. Okay, great. And then 5, the last one, have you attended any of our other webinars? Yes, no, not sure. Maybe it's too much going on. You don't remember what you did yesterday. Okay, quite a few of you have attended other webinars. That's good to see. I hope they were helpful for you. For those of you that haven't, please again, go to the funding of opportunity page for the FGP and SCP replacement opportunity and watch those recordings. So we're going to look over our agenda for today. Before we dive into the heart of today, we will go over some basics of the opportunity. We will be talking about community impact, talking about leveraging volunteers to make a difference. We are going to give a little bit of a refresher to go over what foster grandparents and senior companion programs are and how they work. And then we'll start to get to particulars. We will look at focus areas and funding priorities, 2 different things that are very important to master for your application. We will look at sponsors and stations, 2 key terms, and how those 2 kinds of organizations can come together for a great impact. And then we will look at some examples of AmeriCorps Seniors and in specific foster grandparents and senior companion programs. So let's start with the opportunity basics. We at AmeriCorps Seniors are currently accepting applications for the AmeriCorps Seniors foster grandparent and senior companion replacement opportunity. And you can go into our system and begin your application or submit application at any time between now and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on February 3rd, 2022, right around the corner. I've got a screenshot right now of a colored coded map that shows the states that have openings. In blue, you will see states in which there are opportunities for foster grandparent programs. In purple, you'll see states for which there are opportunities for the AmeriCorps Senior Companion Program. So again, blue is for the foster grandparent program and purple is for the Senior Companion Program. Those opportunities are listed on a table called Appendix A, which shows all of the open funding opportunities. We'll talk through later in the hour about how to propose what you and your organization would like to serve. Just know for now, Appendix A is an important document. It is the appendix of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. One of the many resources that you will use, many of the first questions are likely along the line of what you are seeing on the screen right now. How long is the award? What is the renew process? Sorry, what is the review process? Are any matching funds required? What information should I include in my application? What kinds of projects are AmeriCorps hoping to fund? The vast majority of the answers to these questions are actually included in the document that is called the Notice of Funding Opportunity. We also refer to that as NOFO, NOFA, or the notice. This is your gateway to the opportunity. Again, it is your map to the competition. That means all of the information that you need will either be available in this document or linked in the document. Again, this is the Notice of Funding Opportunity. This is where you should start. Read it, know it upside and down and backwards. It is a very critical document. You can find this again on the FGP SCP replacement funding opportunity page, which is on the screen now, and we've circled where those notices are. Here on the screen now, we have the resources to get you through the application process. And in addition to the NOFA or the notice, again, that's the notice of funding opportunity, there are other resources that will be important to you. We talked about the Appendix A, the list of priority areas. This is available resource service areas. If you are applying for an FGP or SCP program, you must be serving one or more of those counties listed. We have the Appendix B, which explains our national performance measures in depth. We offer a specific webinar on the topic that goes more in depth on the national performance measures. We will cover how to enter your information for performance measures today. There's also Appendix C. It's a helpful document that lists all the terms and definitions used by AmeriCorps Seniors. So if you're ever in a document and you're like, what was a VSY again, or anything like that, you can refer to that document. There are the grant application instructions. It's a step-by-step guide to navigate our electronic grants management system. This also includes the work plan development worksheet, which is very helpful as you begin to work on your performance measure plans and activities that you plan to do and communicate to AmeriCorps. Again, this can be found in the grant application instructions. Another appendix to this grant application instructions is the budget checklist. Highly recommend that you work through that too as you work through your budget. And then lastly, we have the frequently asked questions. We update this as we get questions, particularly if they come in repetitively. And so it's good to check the website frequently to see if there's been any updates there and use that document. All of these resources are available to you on the AmeriCorps Funding Opportunity homepage. If you don't get the information you need today and it's not in one of those resources, you can email the AmeriCorps email box for 2022 FGP SCP replacement at cncs.gov. Okay, here we are in our agenda now. Before we dive into the heart of today, we will go over some basics of the competition. We will talk through community impact, talking about leverage volunteers to make a difference. We are going to give you a little bit of a refresher to go over the foster grandparent and senior companions and their impact and the work they do. Then we will start to get into practicals. We will look at focus areas and funding priorities, two different things that are very important to the mastering of your application. And we will look at sponsors and stations, two key terms, and how those make an impact. So the basics. The foster grandparent program, also referred to as FGP, this program engages older Americans as role models and mentors to help children and with special and exceptional needs. It is all about building support one-on-one relationships between young people in need and older Americans. It also has an exclusive purpose of engaging older Americans in service at or near the poverty level. Anyone can be a volunteer, but older Americans who are within 200% poverty line may receive a small stipend to defray the cost of service. This is to make sure that an opportunity to serve cannot be limited because of those circumstances. It is very similar to the Senior Companion Program, also referred to as SCP, which provides assistance and friendship to adults who have difficulty with daily living tasks such as shopping or paying bills, helping them remain independent in their homes. AmeriCorps Senior volunteers in the Senior Companion Program, SCP, do things like help with daily chores, drive to doctor appointments, etc. They can provide information to older Americans to help them do things like avoid elderly abuse or fraud in their home, really serving to make independence a reality. Again, eligible volunteers may receive a small stipend for their service. The stipend is actually $3 an hour. Now that we've got a picture in mind, let's get a little more technical. We are now going to spend some time working on specific terms. There are two key terms that you need to know to really understand how AmeriCorps Seniors, FGP and SCP work. The first is a sponsor, which we use synonymously to grantee. An organization that receives AmeriCorps Senior funding and is legally responsible for the grant funds. Again, that's the legally responsible agency awarded the grant. So if you submit applications to this opportunity, you will need someone to sign that says, yes, I officially accept responsibility for everything I am seeing in the organization that has the authority. This is the sponsor that is legally responsible. Then there is another set of organizations, if you will, called a station, the community partner where AmeriCorps Senior volunteers in either FGP or SCP serve. Again, volunteer stations are where AmeriCorps Senior volunteers in FGP or SCP serve. They can be nonprofit organizations, proprietary health facilities, or public agencies. Some organizations may choose to operate like a volunteer matchmaker, recruit a diverse group of volunteers, placing them at a wide variety of stations. Others may choose to focus on a couple specific stations. For example, an organization that provides education programs might choose to focus its efforts and its volunteers on education within specific schools that serve as a station. Your sponsor organization can also serve as an AmeriCorps Senior volunteer station. So you can have volunteers serving at your own program if you are the organization applying for the funds. The relationship between sponsor and station is formalized in a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU. AmeriCorps Senior sponsors formally work with volunteer stations under the signed MOU, and your project would assign AmeriCorps Senior volunteers to that particular volunteer station. What that really means is that that a grantee or the sponsor is the agency receiving the funds, and as such, you've got stations out there in the community. The grantee provides the management of the grant, and the volunteers and the station provides on-site supervision and management, and also some performance data back to the grantee so that they can then enter it back to AmeriCorps. That is all the formalization that goes into the MOU. Again, so as you see here, AmeriCorps, the agency, and AmeriCorps Seniors, we provide funds to the sponsoring organization. The grantee then becomes legally responsible for managing the grant. They go out and recruit volunteers in their community and then place them at community stations. Now that you know more about the AmeriCorps Seniors Foster Grandparent and Senior Companion programs, you have probably already realized some of the benefits that AmeriCorps Seniors could bring to your organization. If you were awarded a grant through this opportunity, AmeriCorps Senior volunteers can be used to build the capacity of your organization through their service. Your organization would become part of the larger AmeriCorps and National Service Network. Your AmeriCorps FGP or SCP project would strengthen other organizations in your community and throughout the service area. Finally, your award would demonstrate that your application was strong enough to be awarded through this opportunity and grant process. There are federal programs, these are federal programs. What that means is the funds come with a basket of rules and regulations. Again, with federal, there's always rules and regulations. So this is not meant to be an in-depth description of all of the rules and regulations. This is just meant to indicate some things you are going to need to familiarize yourself with if you are interested in applying for these programs. I will go over these briefly, but I really want to stress that these are not meant to be all-inclusive. If you want to learn more, come back to other webinars or watch them recorded and learn more about them in depth. And we will point out all the resources that are connected to that. Assignments. Each program has a specific kind of assignment in mind, and those are one-to-one supportive relationships. An example, it might mean a foster grandparent volunteer should be working with 1 or 2 or 3 specific children in need of some kind of special support, and generally not doing broad or base teacher aid activities, cleaning a classroom, that kind of thing. That's generally not what an AmeriCorps Senior volunteer should be doing. All volunteers need to go through a specific criminal history check. There is more information of that in the notice. Just keep in mind so you can include that in your budget. There are minimum and maximum amount of service weekly or hourly. All grantees must measure their performance according to a certain set of performance measures you can find in Appendix B of the notice, and attend 2-week sessions. And also there is a webinar on the Appendix B. Because of these programs come with a stipend of volunteers, you have to manage the stipend expenditures carefully over the course of the year. You have to provide a certain amount of pre-service orientation as well. Finally, this might be familiar to those of you who have federal grants, but you must use the funds in a way that is reasonable, allowable, allocable, and necessary. You can refer to the 2 CFR 200, the Code of Federal Regulations, for more detail. There is also a match associated with these grants. In terms of rules and regulations, this is not all the homework you need to do, but this general reminder that says before you apply to the program, you want to read through the regulations to make sure it makes sense with you and aligns with your vision. We think they have a tremendous power to affect communities. We also want to make sure people go into this with their eyes wide open and make sure it meets your vision. So on the screen, we have the match. There is the match requirement of 10%. And so if the example of a grantee Verona Department of Aging is requesting $260,000, they're required by the regulation to have a 10% match. So you could use the formula on the screen of 260,000 divided by 0.9 minus 260,000 to get the 10%. And that would equal the required non-federal share of $28,889. The project period for grants for this competition is 3 years. AmeriCorps generally funds 1 year of the 3-year award at first. Organizations are then eligible for continuation funding for years 2 and 3 as long as they first demonstrate satisfactory performance that indicates the grant is on track to achieving the proposed performance at the end of the 3-year period, demonstrates the capacity to manage the grant, are in compliance with grant requirements. This includes terms and conditions of the grant, the requirements of biannual reporting of performance, and securing the required non-federal share of the budget, also known as the match, and the availability of congressional appropriation. After 3 years, the grant may be renewed, a non-competitive process pending appropriation and satisfactory performance. So here on the screen, you can see the breakdown of the performance period, so year 1. And then as we click, we'll see the budget period 2 and 3, which would be continuation. And then if you're going from year 3 to year 1, we click and we'll see the renewal non-competitive. And then again, that goes into year 2 to year 3, which would be a continuation award, depending on if you're meeting all of their requirements. And then rolling into the 6th year would be a renewal process. And then you would start this all over again. So on the chat, we have some more additional resources. AmeriCorps Seniors serves. This shares information for a volunteer perspective. So if you are new and you wanted to see and tie this into your application, you can go there to have a better understanding. We also have AmeriCorps grantee and sponsor pages, both for our foster grandparent and senior companion. This provides all the guidance that we provide for our currently awarded grantees. There's also the national service in your state, which provides a state-by-state guide to all national service in a single state. You can choose a state and then view the year in review full reports for more information. And then we also include the ecfr.gov. That is the Code of Federal Regulations, the official regulations governing the FGP and SCP programs are for SCP is 45 CFR 2551, and for FGP is 45 CFR 2552. And I'm going to include that in the chat as well. So let's do a quick poll, check in on how everyone's doing. Which of these reasons for applying for the AmeriCorps Senior FGP or SCP grant is more important to you? Any one of these? Hopefully people are still on the line. Okay, it looks like helping older Americans in my community stay active and engaged is the winner of the options, as well as furthering my organization's mission, leveraging the power of volunteers, and building our capacity. Those are great reasons. Okay, and last question. If I am awarded an AmeriCorps Seniors FGP or SCP grant, I am likely to which of the following? Have volunteers primarily serve in programs managed by the sponsor or grantee, primarily place volunteers in service opportunities in other organizations. So the difference between those is sponsor or grantee, and then serving at other organizations would be the station, or have roughly an equal mix of the two options. I'm not sure, still figuring it out. Okay, it looks like the primary answer is within the sponsor. So the sponsor would be the station. We do have a couple that would use stations, and then a mix of the two as well. Good to see. Now we're going to look at what to do next. Let's talk about how you can actually get started with your application. We will go through a checklist about what to do. The first thing is to find the geographical service area that you are interested in serving on Appendix A. I showed you a screenshot of that at the beginning of what Appendix A looks like for the foster grandparent program. You'll look at Appendix A and think about the capacity of your organization and what can be feasible to serve. You'll think about the volunteer service years, which is also referred to as VSY. What is unique about this particular opportunity is that you can design your own program. Your proposal to us is what you want to serve within the confines of the rules and regulations. So let's start by talking about the volunteer service years, VSYs. A VSY is a volunteer service year. It is a way to count volunteer hours, particularly stipended volunteer hours. 1 VSY equals 1,044 stipended hours. There are 1,044 hours in a VSY, a volunteer service year. The number comes from an estimate of what a volunteer would serve if they only served 20 hours per week, every week over the year. So 52.2 weeks. I do want to make a note here that some volunteers may serve more or less than that, but this is just the total hours of services that you are putting into your plan and budgeting for. So let's do a simple example. Using the formula of 52.2 weeks at 20 hours per week, 1 VSY equals 1,044. So what would 10 VSYs equal based on that formula? So in the chat, can anyone tell me what 10 VSYs would equal? I can at least get 1 or 2 responses in the chat that lets me know that I'm still have participants. Okay, thank you, Mary. You are correct, 10,440. So you're going to take 1,044 times 10. Okay, moving forward, we're going to look at the Appendix A and all of the open counties in your state, and you get to the proposing what you will serve. So applications must propose to serve 1 or more open geographic service areas in their application. For example, if you were in a fictional state of Verona, you could propose to serve Montague County. Or you could propose to serve Montague and Capulet counties. Once you've decided what you want to do, you'll get to proposing the funding amounts that will best allow you to meet the needs of your respective geographical service area. Regardless of the funding request, all applicants are required to follow the calculation of 1 VSY for every 6,500 in their funding request. So we'd want to, and then you'll hear me talk about this 6,500 requirement and what that means for performance measures in the National Performance Measure webinar. There is currently a recording posted, and I believe there's another webinar. But now that is a 6,500 per volunteer service year, or VSY. I know some people like to start from total federal funding that they want to request and then trickle down to the VSY. I like to think of the opposite manner. So back to our proposed geographical service area of Montague and Capulet counties. Let's say, I think in order to meet our community needs, I'm going to need 40 VSY, volunteer service years. I'm going to take that 40 VSY times 6,500, which gives me the maximum amount of funding requests that I can make, which would be the $260,000. To see how working backwards help us determine how to get to how much funds we're going to need. So again, VSYs refers to the total hours of services that you're wanting to provide in your communities. Because again, you're going to take that 40 times that 144 hours, and that gives you your total number there too. But again, 40 VSYs times 6,500 equals 260,000. So that would be your baseline funding request. So what do we do next? We talk about determining your geographical service area using Appendix A and considering your VSYs. Next, we want to review the notice of funding opportunity. Make sure it's in depth, your blueprint to the opportunity. Again, this document will help you understand what AmeriCorps Seniors is looking for in this opportunity. What makes a good application? The evaluation criteria, these are the same things that AmeriCorps, the agency, will use to evaluate your application, so that is what you should be using. This is not all you should pay attention to in the funding and notice opportunity course. You should read it thoroughly, but no, it is an incredibly important document. When you are actually putting your application together, we recommend using the word processing programs like Microsoft Word or Google Docs. Your application has to be submitted in something called eGrants. You can find more information of that in the notice. It is an online tool, and it provides ways to submit your information to AmeriCorps. It is a little clunky when drafting your application. It is not meant for drafting like Word documents. That's why we recommend crafting your application in a Word document and then cutting and pasting it into eGrants. As you will see when you start to look at the application, request performance evaluations in a work plan, it's kind of like a table where those of you who are familiar with a logic model or framework, it's based on that model. We have a template that you can use within the grant application instructions to help you formulate that. And then again, cut and paste it into eGrants. Speaking of eGrants, our electronic grant management software, you need to create an account for eGrants, so make sure to do that. Your authorized representative is the individual legally responsible to bind your organization in a contractual agreement. So it's very important, and very often it will be the executive director or someone at the level will need to have actual certifies the application. So a director or a CEO who normally signs off on contracts will need to have their own account to be able to sign off on the application in eGrants. You can find instructions on creating the account within the grant application instructions. There are a couple of administrative steps that you need to take. Make sure to register in SAMS and request a DUNS number if you don't have one already. These are easy to miss, and you don't want to wait until the end of the process to do that. It's not terribly labor intensive, but nonetheless, it is important and can take some time. That brings us to the last recommendation. Please plan to submit your application early. We like to recommend 10 days in advance. If that is not realistic, just do what you can. You don't want to be submitting your application on Wednesday, February 3rd, and it's 4:45, and then you hit a problem within eGrant, and it might make your application late. We do have a hotline for help if you run into technical glitches. You will need to do things like check Word, count, fill out budgets, performance measures. All of these things can take time, so you want to be ahead of the game and ready to submit your application early. I really can't stress this enough. You do want to, again, be at 4:59 and then hit an issue and your application is late. So early, early, early. Okay, and we have a video to show you.
We are on 7th Street in Missoula, Montana, and we are currently building our 46th home in Missoula County. We are building for the Middlestat family, and what's priceless about the RSVP volunteers is by using their labor on our build site and even in our office, we're able to keep the cost of the home affordable for these families. They truly are priceless because they're allowing these families to purchase a home and keep it affordable for them.
Come on and show me my new house. Here's one of the kids' bedrooms. Here's their other kid's bedroom. And then this is our room. I'm glad to be a homeowner finally.
I have had a senior companion. We go grocery shopping to pick up my prescriptions, my doctor appointments.
I help, Missoula Aging helps the state. We're all working together to keep these people safe and in their homes if we can. The cost is so much smaller.
It saves the state a lot of money, saves me a lot of money, and it's just nice to be independent and live independently.
If I didn't have a senior companion, I would be really lost.
I've been a principal for 20 years and I've worked with foster grandparents all of those years. The foster grandparents are really key in our testing program. You definitely see advances in academic areas because children benefit from that one-on-one attention they get.
We do have a 20-to-1 ratio, and so having another person in the room and other adults just make it a lot easier for us to help teach these kids.
Oh, the progression, you can't believe it. I had one little girl that wouldn't even say anything at Head Start. When I got to the end of the year, she was talking. She was using please and thank you.
I volunteer 4 hours a day. I could leave for lunch, but those kids all want to eat lunch with me every day.
Well, one of the things that I really like about volunteering with RSVP is that not only are we giving back to the community, but we're also saving money for the library where we work mending books. Because if we weren't there to mend books, they would just be thrown away. We were trained by a staff member there, and then she was able to go back to her regular job.
We serve on the average of about 250 meals a day to our clients. With my background as a physician for 40 years, my main function with Meals on Wheels is to do nutritional follow-ups on the clients to make sure that they are being adequately provided for.
As an RSVP volunteer, I've used skills that I've amassed over my professional career. People sit at computer terminals and I help them, if they're not computer savvy, to navigate the different plans on Medicare.gov.
Its companionship is wonderful. It's, you know, there's grace.
When I get back to the house after visiting with them, it's just like, oh, that was good.
As a volunteer, it puts some action in my life. I love the community and I love the service that it does.
All right, awesome. We love ending with an uplifting note and a reminder of all that our AmeriCorps Senior volunteers do and the impact that they have and that it's real. So let's now move on into questions. So if you could please submit any questions into the Q&A box. On the screen are some reminders of trainings that are coming. So please, if you have any interest in those, please sign up for them. You can find the links to those on the funding opportunity page, which Mike thankfully has put into the chat box. We have roughly 15 minutes to go, so if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box. If I don't get any questions by 3:50, I'm going to take it that there are none and potentially close this webinar 10 minutes early. If you don't have any questions and you're done, feel free to leave the webinar as well. So Mary put a question in the chat box. She asked, it does vary based on person to person and how experienced they are in completing the applications. I think it could be between an hour and a half, if not longer, if they have to collect more information or they do it section by section. You are welcome. Okay, I'm going to do a 2-minute warning for any additional questions, or we'll be closing the webinar at 3:50 our time, Eastern Standard Time.
Hey, Debbie, we've got one more question from Mary in the chat. She asks if there's a list of current and past awardees and sample documents.
For sample documents, no, but our grant application instructions does give step-by-step guidance, as well as the work plan development sheets that you can use to help you work through that, and the budget checklist that was designed by our Office of Grant Administration to help that. On our AmeriCorps Gov page, you can find previously awarded grantees, as well as see if there's other grantees in the area through the Pathfinder. So you can explore the AmeriCorps.gov website to kind of see those. I do want to do a plug since I mentioned the budget on the website for funding opportunity. We do have a recording of best practices for budget development. Our Office of Grant Administration did a great job of reviewing that and kind of guiding applicants through that process. So I highly recommend that as well. Again, if you are still thinking through questions or something comes up between now and what day next week? It's in the chat. Between now and January 12th, so next Wednesday, we are offering an FAQ session. So please feel free to attend that. And that'll be straight FAQs to process that if you have any additional questions, and hope to see you there. Thank you so much for your attendance, particularly your interest in establishing FGP and SCP programs for our AmeriCorps Senior volunteers to make an impact in the community. Really glad to see your interest. And thank you to my colleagues on the line for all your support in this. I think we will end it now.